guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to show you guys how I put together the last video where I showed you guys how to make the Hello Sunshine design. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll link it down in the description, but I'm going to show you how I bring it all together with this beautiful yellow into white ombre, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. As you guys can tell, I love sunflowers, so this cup was definitely right up my alley. So if you are here to see a adorable sunflower, just happy cup, stick around, we'll get into it.
Alrighty, so I sanded, washed and dried, and then base coated my cup with yellow and white, both from Rust-Oleum. I warmed up my cup in front of a space heater for just a couple of seconds, and I'm using just a super light coat of epoxy here. I've mixed up 5 milliliters, but I only use about 2 milliliters on this cup, and you just want to spread it out super thin, trying to make sure you don't have any streaks, because if you have streaks, oftentimes it will show up under your epoxy. I then created a mix of 4 parts Morning Snow and 1 part Opal of My Eye for the top part, and then a mix of 2 parts Odie with 1 part Rubber Ducky for the mid part, and then down at the bottom I have 1 part Banana Peels to 1 part Rubber Ducky. And I'm just going to start at the top here. I'm going to get a really solid coat of white glitter all the way around for about 1 inch into the cup. This is going to ensure that when I ombre up from the bottom, none of that yellow is going to stick to the top rim. I want it to be a solid white. And then I'm going to tip my cup down at about a 45-degree angle and just kind of barely cascading the glitter onto it. You guys have seen me do a couple of ombre videos at this point, but we're just getting a very sparse coat. We're going to tap it off in between each time we change colors, and then from the middle I'm tipping it up so it kind of blends up into that white just a little bit. Again, just a tiny little bit. We're going to build up these colors. We're not just dumping it on. And then I'm going to turn it over, and at a 45-degree angle, kind of angled down, I'm going to start cascading that yellow into the bottom of the cup. And same thing, just a little bit at a time. You can always add more, you can't take it away. After I make sure that I have a good coat, I am going to take this bottom darkest color. I'm making sure I get a full coverage all over the bottom and about that first 1 inch of around that bottom rim. Same reason as the top. I want to make sure that when I'm angling my cup down, I don't get any white down into this yellow part. I want to make sure it's a complete solid yellow. And then same thing as before, up at about a 45-degree angle and just barely tapping a little bit onto the cup at a time to build up those colors. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth in between all of them until I get the amount of coverage that I want. Making sure I top off in between each color. Coming up at the top, I'm going to make sure I have 100% coverage up there, just going around the top here, and then going to start getting a little more coverage further down the cup, and then come in at the middle color, coming up into that white just a little bit further than I did before, making sure the two are kind of blending seamlessly as possible. Sorry if you guys can hear my dog snoring. It's my bloodhound German Shorthair cross. She is dreaming something terrible. Anyway, so light coverage, but just a little bit more than we did the first round. And coming down into the bottom, we're going to bring that midsection just a little bit further down into that brighter yellow. And then as soon as I get a good enough coverage that I think there, I'm going to switch the final time to the brightest yellow. Same as the top, getting a good solid coverage. Gonna work it on up into that mid-yellow section. And I've used colors that I think will blend well together. So it looks like there's only 2 colors here blending in, but in all actuality, there's 3. I've seen other people use like the tea strainer method, but that didn't work for me. And so with this last pass, we're going to kind of just open it up and get as good of a coverage as we can. We're trying to make sure that we get glitter all over everywhere. You don't want any like wet or patchy areas. That means you haven't got enough glitter there, and that will kind of show up in your final coat after you epoxy. So you want to make sure it's all very dry looking and have very full coverage. And then after I get that all settled, I'm going to let this cure for 2 to 4 hours. It depends on if you're using fast set or regular epoxy. And then I go in, this first coat of epoxy is the first coat of a flood coat. And I used about 40 milliliters of epoxy. I use Artistry epoxy because I love the way it sets up. It's a little bit thicker, so I get a really good coverage this first coat, which to me means less time and less epoxy overall. I love that it's a crystal clear shine too, and I don't have many problems with bubbles or anything like that. So I just work my way down the cup, kind of going side to side. I get the bottom, and then I use a basket weave mentality, trying to make sure that I get every part of the cup. So I'll start at the bottom and just bring my finger up and over that top rim just a little bit to make sure that I've got every part of this cup covered in epoxy. I then let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then I hit it with my torch. You don't want to stop in any one area. You want to make sure you just keep it going so you don't scorch your epoxy. And then I'm going to let that spin for about 5 hours, go in with a second coat, and I did about 35 milliliters of epoxy on the second coat, and it is, seriously you guys, it is smooth. So that's why I do a flood coat. So then I'm going to take this design that I created in the last video, I'm going to soak it in the water slide, allow it to do its magic, and then wet my cup with a little bit of water. I mirror my images so I can just set it on there and just kind of slide the backing off rather than kind of fussing with, is it going on? Is it getting wrinkles? Blah, blah, blah. You can see here that it does just slick as a whistle, go right on. And then I take this little silicone brush, make sure it's wet, and kind of guide the bubbles and any wrinkles that you might have. You guide them out with this little silicone brush. Work my way around. I make sure I kind of go at all angles so I can hit any bubbles that are stuck under there. And then I do the same thing for this other little design, soak it in the water, and then I hold my cup up and exactly mirrored on the other side, I just set it down onto my cup cradle so that way I know it's exactly the opposite side of that front design. And same thing here, I'm just going to wet it in the water, slide it off onto the cup, and then use the silicone brush to get out any bubbles or wrinkles or anything. I'm then going to use a black Sharpie marker, and I'm just making these little dots, and what I'm doing here is making kind of like a mock visual trail of where this little bee is coming from this back flowers. I know it's hard to see where the bee is, but I don't know, it just adds a little bit of something, kind of a whimsical nature to it, and it goes from the front design to the back design, kind of ties it all in. I just thought it was a cute addition. And like I do with so many of my cups, I always like to add just a little something on the bottom. I just think it's super cute, like when you tip up your cup to drink, other people can see the bottom of it, and it just is a little extra. So I just make sure it's kind of evenly spaced with the rest of the designs, both on the front and the back. Kind of make sure they're lined up well, and same as the other one, flip it over, slide the backing off, and take the rubber or the silicone paintbrush and make sure there's no bubbles or wrinkles. And when I got done, I realized that I wanted this design to be a little more opaque. So I just went through and printed the exact same designs, the exact same sizes, and just lined them up over the originals that are already on the cup. And it does, you gotta kind of fiddle with it a little bit to get it completely lined up. But I think it just kind of makes it pop a little bit more. The yellow up into the white caused it to be not quite as opaque as I was hoping for. Alternately, you could obviously use white water slide or paint the back of your water slide with acrylic paint. But I had already had the water slide on my cup, and just this is something you can do as kind of a little bonus if you've already committed to it, so that you can improve a design without having to start over again or even just leave it kind of subpar. So hopefully this helps you guys. I then let the water slides dry for about an hour, and then I came in with polyacrylic gloss. And the reason I use gloss is that it creates kind of a seamless transition between the glossiness of your epoxy, and you're now putting gloss over the top of this water slide. So that way you can't see the edges and the transition between the water slide to the epoxy. I then let this air dry for about an hour, and then I went in with a coat of epoxy, which was about 30 milliliters, and then it was just a hair rough on the bottom rim, so I went in with one more coat of epoxy, which was also about 30 milliliters. Cleaned up the rim and let it cure for a couple days to be able to deliver it to the customer. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell notification so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos I have planned. If this video left you guys with any questions whatsoever, please leave them in the comments section, and I will return messages as I am able. And until next time, you guys, have a great day.